Tell me what's wrong with this chord. Well, in truth, there's a whole bunch of things wrong with that chord. What I'm going to do in today's video is I'm going to go through a big list of a way that you can clean up your chords. Point number one, we're going to make sure we diagnose the chord before we start playing. So let's say, for example, that chord that I played in the intro, we had a C major 7 chord. So it should sound like this. But it sounded a bit all over the place, and I had some missing notes. So here's how we diagnose it. We go through one step at a time. So you hear that last note there? The last note didn't come through, so I know which one is the problem now. Helps me fix that one chord. So remember to go through note by note and make sure that each one is sounding off nicely. Next point. You need to know for each chord how many strings you should be playing. So let me give you an example. With a D major chord, you want to be playing string 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? So a D major chord, 4 notes happening at the same time there. How about an A sus2 chord? 5 strings being played. I want to avoid playing the bottom E string in a chord that's only supposed to have the 5 strings in, like this. I want to get rid of that bottom E chord and make sure I don't play that too. Okay, so make sure you know how many notes are in your chord that you're trying to play. Okay, next point. You need to make sure the positioning of the guitar on your lap or on the strap is in a decent place for you to be playing your chords. If you want your strap to be super low and have the guitar down by your waist, which a lot of people do like, I will say you are going to have a little bit more trouble sounding your chords nicely. You need to have the guitar nice and close to your body, and personally I prefer to have the headstock ever so slightly leaning forward and away, so I have a bit of a diagonal space to work with. Just seems a little easier for me. Next point. All of your chords are going to be made up of a certain amount of notes. Now, if each of those notes don't sound right, then the whole chord's going to fall apart. So let's just look at one note specifically. Going back to our chord that we had earlier, the C major 7. I just want to focus on the root note right now, the C. So let's have a look at this. Nice simple C note. Now what I want to do with that is show you what happens when we start losing some pressure from it. Hear the buzz come in? And now we've just got a dud note, okay? So I'm going to start bringing that back in from scratch, no pressure at all, bringing it up and up and up until we have the right amount of pressure, and then I'm going to show you what happens when you go too far. Okay, so here's no pressure at all. We're bringing some more in now. We've got our buzz. The buzz is sustaining now, and then just a tiny bit more pressure, and we've got the note we want. Now you shouldn't really be putting any more pressure on past this point, because there's a couple of things that can happen. One, if I press really hard, I'm sinking the string right into the fret and sharpening the note. I want to be back here. So you make sure you don't want to go too far. The other thing is, you want to be very careful that you're not exerting too much pressure all the time. Your arms are going to get really, really tired, and you're going to find that playing a 4-chord song is just going to completely knacker you out after the first minute. Next, on a related issue, you want to also make sure that you find the sweet spot on each fret. Let's go back to our example of playing the C at the root of our chord. Now, you can be playing right at the bottom of the fret down here, or you can be playing right at the top. You get varied results depending on where you are. So here we go, right at the bottom here, you're likely to get buzz again. A bit higher up with the same amount of pressure, I've got a nice clean note. So it really depends whereabouts you're going to put your finger on each chord. Let's go back to the full chord. You may notice that I'm trying to push each finger as close as I can up to the fret wire of the next fret and make sure that it's nice and sort of seated behind it. This means I don't have to exert too much pressure, and just like the last point, I'm not going to tire myself out too quickly. Next, I want to talk about the left arm, because this is the one that's going to be actually fretting the notes for your chord. So all the way from the shoulder to the fingertip, I like to imagine a perfect spiral with no acute angles in it. The reason is, much like if you put a kink in a hose pipe, you're going to have a little bit of extra pressure at that point that you don't need. So if you have your wrist super bent like that, again, this happens when you're using the strap really low. Big bend in the wrist. I don't want too much of a bend in my elbow. All of these things are just going to make it a little easier for you to, again, stamina, and also just have your chords nice and clean, which is what this is all about. Right, next point. I like to call this one the lane of traffic idea. So when you're playing a chord, much like a D major chord, you might find this happen. My last note's not coming through, and the reason is that one of the other fingers is getting in his way. So I'm fretting all the notes properly, but one of the fingers is actually slightly going over its boundary and muting one of the other strings. I'll show you which one it is. This finger here, my ring finger playing this note, if it slightly overlaps onto the next string, we're not getting anything. All I have to do is change my angle and make sure all the lanes of traffic can pass safely under the bridges of your fingers without being impeded. So this point is a little bit contentious, but I'm going to voice it anyway. So I like to imagine the right hand as a super gentle Disney princess, and the left hand is the hand of the Incredible Hulk. Now, when you get into this mindset, you start kind of imagining your left hand as being this very, very strong sort of driving force against your chord, and the right hand is very, very gentle. Now, here's the kind of result I get from doing that. Super strong left hand, very gentle right hand. Here we go. That's a nice, crisp, clean chord. Just for the sake of science, let's do it the other way around, okay? So my left hand is now going to be extremely gentle on the left. The right hand is going to go really overboard with the power. Okay, that's not a nice chord sound. It's not even close. So you see how like overpowering the right hand can actually really, really ruin your chords. So make sure the right hand is gentle, left hand very, very strong and sturdy. So here's one that a lot of my students suffer from. You're trying to play a chord and you're pushing so hard that you actually slide one of the notes laterally across the fretboard. I did this at the beginning with my bad chord impression. So here's the chord normally. Okay. And here's what happens if I accidentally push so hard that I'm pulling the strings across the fretboard. It's not quite there. You can hear the tuning's a little bit off. I'll do it a bit more so you can really hear it. Can you hear that bottom note? Now, it seems like I'm over-exaggerating that, because I am, but it does happen. I see people playing a chord and they're trying so hard to make sure that they're getting the pressure right that they actually slide into a pitch bend, and they have a pitch bend within their chord, which just ruins the tuning. So here's one that I do all the time. I'm so guilty of this, and I only really found out I was doing it about 2 or 3 years ago, and it completely derailed a whole bunch of my studio recordings. What's going on here? So you can hear the tuning fluctuating there. What's happening is my right elbow is pushing against the body, and my left hand is pulling the fretboard towards me. So what I'm doing is I'm actually slightly bowing the neck of my guitar because I'm pulling against it. So here we go again. It can go the other way too. So your tuning can be subject to you just the way you hold the guitar. This happens a lot in recording because you're really concentrating, trying to make sure you get that chord just right, and you don't realize that you're pulling the body of the guitar back. Even though you spend ages tuning before the take, your take has been ruined because you haven't sat just nice and straight and just let the guitar sit in its normal state. So when you're holding the neck, are you gripping it between your fingertips and your palm, or your fingertips and your thumb? Because it does make a big difference. When you have your thumb on the back of the neck, you can really spread your fingers out. So let's say I'm playing a chord like this G minor add 9. Okay, so this chord is going to be really hard to do if I have my palm on the back, even though it's totally feasible for a D major chord. But when you start doing slightly more advanced, wider chords, you're definitely going to need to have your thumb on the back, or there's just no way you're going to be able to spread your fingers out. Let's talk about capos. So there's lots of different capos you can get. I personally really like these ones because they have an adjustable spring on the back. The reason that that's important is because sometimes the capo can exert too much pressure on the fret, and whatever you play above the capo, it's just going to be out of tune. Okay, so I've got my capo set up on the 3rd fret, and I'm just going to listen to one string for now. So we're going to go through these pressures again. We've got some buzz. I'm going to keep tuning this up. There we go, I've got a note. And it's getting sharper. Now I've tightened the capo too much. It's too sharp. Now you might want to adjust your capo and then tune your guitar and then try it, but I promise you it's always going to mess with it unless you spend a bit of time adjusting your capo, change the angle, buddy it right up against the next fret. Try lots of different things to just make sure your tuning is sound, especially before you want to record any takes. Lastly, make sure you cut your damn fingernails. With the right hand, it's not such a big deal. In fact, I've seen people grow the fingernails right out, so they've got plectrums attached to their fingers. With the left hand, you must make sure that the fingernails are as short as they can possibly get. The reason is, when you want to go for a nice perpendicular angle of your finger touching the fretboard, if the fingernail is the first thing that touches it, that's already going to be a problem. You need to make sure that you're using the very top part of your finger there, not the flat part of your finger there. So we're pushing down like that, not like that. And that was my list of the top ways that you can clean up your chords. Feel free to like and subscribe. If I missed anything out, I always like extra information that I can use in my lessons, so let me know in the comments if there's anything else. I'm Rich from WebTunes. Thanks very much for watching.